It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.
Good evening, everybody. You're watching America First. My name is Nicholas J. Fuentes. We have a great show for you tonight. Very excited to be back here with you tonight on Friday. We have a lot to talk about tonight, lots to get into. Big show. Kind of slow news week, I'm going to be honest. It's been slow. Government shutdown is happening. No war yet. But that's okay. Our featured story, we're going to talk all about J.D. Vance's trip to Israel, which was interesting. And there's a couple of things happening there. The reason that Vance is in Israel is because this is part of like a diplomatic tour of Israel. You've had Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, Vance. Today, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. They have all visited Israel in rapid succession for one reason, one purpose, and that is to pressure Netanyahu to remain inside the Gaza peace deal. That's it. That's why they are there. Supposedly, we have a done deal. We have our 20-point plan endorsed by everybody, agreed upon by all parties. Hostages have been returned. It's a done deal. And as long as everybody is abiding by it, then there's really no more, at least not urgently, there's no more need for any negotiations or diplomacy or anything like that. So why then in the aftermath of the signing of the deal is there just this train? Is there this procession of diplomatic personnel to Israel? That is because they believe that if they are there on the ground, meeting with the government, visible in Israel, it makes it less likely for the whole thing to collapse. And how would that happen? And Netanyahu would decide to restart the war unilaterally. So that's why he's there. That's the first thing that's going on. Second thing that's going on is that he's trying to make this, they're pivoting. And this is sort of an important thing to understand here. You recognize, like I do, that the pro-Israel consensus has collapsed. Everyone knows that is what is happening in the world right now. And so they're trying to find, on the Republican side, a language to support Israel that is less odious and detestable and offensive to the people. And so what did J.D. Vance do? What did he not do? He visited the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. I think it's in Jerusalem. It's in Israel. Where he visited with Orthodox, Catholic, other clergy from various Christian churches. And he went and did a Christian religious ceremony. He did not visit the Western Wall, which is purported to be the remnant of the Jewish temple from the era of temple worship in Judaism, which is what obviously everybody knows. That's the symbol for our politicians being controlled by Israel. They literally bow their head with the hat on in submission to the state of Israel. And ordinarily that is what is done. So Vance did something and he did not do something. He went to a church. He did not go to the wall. And they're trying to, like I said, they're trying to find a way where we can maintain an alliance with Israel, find reasons to support this, find a language to express this that is different from what came before, which is clearly untenable. And it's not that it's not existent anymore. It's not that that type of Israel support doesn't exist, but the trajectory, and this is what Vance is concerned with, given that he has presidential ambitions, the trajectory in the next generation is that obviously that's going away. So that's the purpose of the visit. We'll talk all about it. We'll also talk tonight, if we have time, about the buildup in Venezuela. Really, it's the same as yesterday. Instead, today, the new development is that the United States is moving an aircraft carrier from the Eastern Mediterranean. I think it was in the Adriatic Sea, actually. So all the way in Europe, they're moving it now to the Southern Command, U.S. Southern Command, which would include Venezuela, which includes the Caribbean. There's also rumors about a troop deployment for training exercises in Trinidad and Tobago off the coast of Venezuela. So it would seem that we might be getting war in 2 weeks. Either that or this is a continuation of maximum pressure. It's really a difference without a distinction, and we'll talk about why that is. Should be a pretty good show. Before we get into the news, I want to remind you to smash the follow button on Rumble, smash the like button, leave a comment, let me know what you think. Check out our store. I have it for you here. This is our brand new shirt, weighing half. White ass going hard as fuck. That's what it says on the front. And on the back, it's me from TikTok. So it's very high quality. You could see it's got the like, I don't know if this is like a collar, but you see how it has like, it's got that like nicer material around the neck. It's a very high quality shirt. It's thick. I know they're selling them on the TikTok shop, but this is from us, and this is superior quality. That's at Fuentes.store. We also have the hats. We have the hats too. Subscribe to the Plus membership, America First Plus at americafirst.plus. $15 a month for the entry-level membership for poor people. That is sort of a nice thing that we do for the poor. But for the rich, we have a $100 a month club. That's the real membership where you get to hang out with me in a group chat and you get all the other benefits. That's americafirst.plus. What else? Yeah, not much. We did a full week here. I wasn't here Monday, but I did 4 shows this week. Next week, I'll probably be here all 5 days. Like I said, I know we didn't do the show for a little while, but I am back now. I don't have too much going on. Nothing major planned. And it's Casual Friday, so I'm wearing this comfy shirt. Are you sick of this shirt yet? I just felt comfortable tonight, so I wanted to wear this. This is like a very soft, comfortable shirt. Very comfy, cozy. We're getting ready for Halloween. We've got all the Halloween decorations ready. So I'm in a good mood. It's midnight. I had my butter burger with cheese curds and a pumpkin milkshake. So I'm in as good of a mood as is possible for me. It's midnight. This is when I'm in the zone. I'm dialed in. Belly's full. The fleece is on. The temperature is dropped. This is good. This is very good. I'm feeling very good. What else? There was something else I wanted to touch on before we got into the news. I forgot what it was. Yeah, well, whatever. Maybe it'll come up in the super chats. But I guess we'll just dive right into the news here. We'll just get started right away. I feel like there was one thing I wanted to say. I totally forgot. Well, whatever. Anyway, we're gonna get into the news, and we'll start with the story about Israel because we covered Venezuela yesterday. Spent a lot of time in detail going over what's happening in South and Central America. I gave a take that was a little controversial. Honestly, I'm getting really irritated with the fans. I'm getting really irritated with a lot of you people. Because it's like, if you lately, here's how I feel about it. And the way it's always been this way. I've been doing this show for 10 years. And for the most part, my views have not changed. I can think of maybe some examples, but for the most part, my views have stayed exactly the same. We are in an era now where everybody is aware of the Jews, aware of race, conspiracies, all these things. And now, if you don't just sound like the biggest, most belligerent retard, racist, Jew hater, whatever, then people say, oh, you're selling out. Oh, you're softening your message. You know, for example, the other night, people are asking me about Gypsy Crusader. And I said I'm against violence. I'm against this idea of a violent revolution and killing people. I'm against screaming at little kids online. I don't think that's helping anybody. And people say, oh, he has to say that. I've been saying that for 10 years, that I'm against political violence. And yesterday we're talking about Venezuela. And I said that it's America first to actually use our military to secure vital American interests. And I would count Venezuela among them, actually. And I don't necessarily support a violent regime change, but In principle, I'm not against it. If you want to be against how he's doing it, that's one thing. But I'm not in principle against him meddling in another country's affairs. And you get people saying, oh, this is neoconservatism. That's not neoconservatism. That's realism. It's a completely different tradition. So I got to be honest. We have reached, I think, the high watermark. We've reached a level of adoption like a technology. Anti-Semitism is like a technology. We've reached a stage in the adoption of anti-Semitism and other things where now it actually might be time to start to refine. Because now it's just attracting a lot of idiots. And I'm going to be straight up with you. I will not be held hostage by idiots that don't know what they're talking about. You know, people that are trying to get us to link up with the communists and the leftists, or Muslims for that matter. People saying that any intervention is neoconservatism. People saying they're calling for civil war and political violence and things like that. I'm not about any of that. Never have been. So just something I noticed. I've been getting really irritated with it. The Charlie Kirk thing is falling apart in real time. Where the fuck did all those people go, huh? You know, they're always right there the day it happens when there's no information. Here we are 2 months later. Where is everybody now, huh? Everybody that was so certain, where's all that evidence that was supposed to come out about Charlie Kirk turning on Israel and all the rest of it? Oh, yeah, it never came out because that wasn't real. He was either killed by a radical leftist or the Mormon mafia. Like, it had nothing to do with them. So, anyway, maybe that's what I wanted to say. But we did cover Venezuela last night, and I went really hard on it, and I said, look, like, we'll get into it maybe tonight. I do consider that a vital strategic interest, and a lot of people said, oh, he's for wars now. We've always been for American power, always. That's what America First is. But anyway, we're going to get into the Israel situation tonight, and we're going to talk all about this. It's a very strange phenomenon. Very strange. As you know, we have entered a new phase in the Middle Eastern conflict, and I would say this is the period of the Gaza peace deal, the 20-point plan, the October peace, whatever you want to call it. We're clearly in a distinct phase. It's not the terminal phase, not the final phase. We're in a new phase in the Middle East conflict, specifically in the Gaza war, ever since there is apparently an agreement in place between Israel and Hamas, which was imposed upon them, apparently, by Trump. And the reason I say apparently is because I don't believe that this deal is what it's cracked up to be. And I've told you why. We're not going to get into the details of that tonight. But I continue to believe that this is a strategic pause in the fighting. This is not an end to the fighting. I don't even think it's really a ceasefire because they're still fighting each other. This looks to me like a tactical retreat, a strategic pause for Israel while they do other things, while they regroup to do other things, or while they're simultaneously doing other things. But basically everything that is being said about all of it is a lie. So Netanyahu says, we're not going to annex the West Bank. That's a lie. I'm telling you right now, that is a lie. They're going to annex the West Bank. And they say they're going to fully withdraw from the Gaza Strip, and they're going to hand off administration of the Strip to some coalition government. Now they're talking about Indonesia and Azerbaijan are going to send the security force. I don't believe that either. I think that's a lie too. So I think this conflict is far from over. I think the conflict concerning the occupied territories, Gaza and the West Bank, that's far from over. And I think the broader Middle Eastern conflict in Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and Iran, that is far from over. So that's why I'm choosing my words carefully. I don't want to say we're in the period of the peace deal. This is it. It's a new, because it's not. And we talked a lot about that earlier in the week. When you understand that Israel's strategic objectives, that their grand strategy, it is contrary to peace. Their doctrine is that they literally cannot allow peace to break out. They rely on a constant low-level state of conflict and fighting to suppress their neighbors and also to preserve their freedom of action. If there is a ceaseless state of conflict, no ceasefire, but it's without ceasing, then they can violate the airspace continuously and at random and at their discretion. Then they can advance with ground forces or special forces at their discretion, as they are talking about doing in Lebanon right now, as they are talking about doing in Syria and currently doing in Syria right now. That is the goal. So we have to be very careful how we look at this situation. Don't be under the illusion because of the headlines that we're in some new chapter based on peace and prosperity. That's all propaganda. And I'll tell you why that is. Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about all of these visits that are taking place. As I said 2 weeks ago, there is this ostensible agreement in place between Israel and Hamas. Israel appears to be scaling back its operations in Gaza. There do not appear to be any ground operations ongoing. They have withdrawn from certain key corridors and from certain cities. They are continuing to bomb Gaza and restrict aid from getting in. So that's why I would characterize it more as a tactical retreat or a strategic pause, because there is still fighting. They are still restricting aid and resources. It's just that their ground operations have been wound down, maybe temporarily. And so that happened a couple of weeks ago. In the meantime, and maybe I've been alluding to this, Israel has violated the ceasefire over 80 times. Most notably this past weekend, when Israel claims that Hamas attacked the IDF in 3 different locations, killing several IDF soldiers, and Israel retaliated with a series of airstrikes, killing hundreds of people, causing hundreds of casualties, and it brought the total number of violations of the ceasefire to over 80. They're also, like I said, not allowing all of the humanitarian aid into the Strip. So this is where it stands in Gaza. This is where it stands in the Middle East. The Organization for Islamic Cooperation, which is all the Muslim countries, and the Arab League, which is all the Arab countries, they all got together and endorsed this deal. The deal was brokered by Qatar, arguably imposed by the United States because they ran out of patience with Israel after Israel bombed the Hamas negotiators in Qatar weeks before that. This is where we are. Now, this week, what is notable is that there has been a nonstop procession of American diplomatic personnel visiting Israel. And early in the week, it was Jared Kushner, who was the president's son-in-law, but he was instrumental in brokering the deal and the original Abraham Accords because of his ties, not just to Israel, but to the Gulf countries, which are very rich. And also Steve Witkoff, the special envoy for the president. And Witkoff, too, has significant financial ties to the Arab Gulf countries, to, in particular, Qatar. So they went to Israel first. Then there was a visit from the Vice President, J.D. Vance, who was there yesterday. And he visited with Netanyahu, and he visited some of the churches and holy sites. Now today, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has arrived in Israel, where he's meeting with his counterparts, and he's doing the tour in Israel. And so you have to ask yourself, what is going on? Why is this happening? Wouldn't you expect to see this before the deal was completed rather than after? We have a deal in place. So shouldn't everybody be going home and going somewhere else? Well, the reason that they're doing it this way, it's sort of obvious. It's intentional. They're making sure that every single day this week, there is a major diplomatic official from the United States on the ground in Israel. Surely the significance is not lost on anybody that every single day this week, someone has been there. Witkoff and Kushner, the vice president, the secretary of state, every day they made sure, and not just low-level officials. Bear in mind, there's already 200 American soldiers in Israel that are there to monitor the deal. So Vance and Rubio, these are very high level. This is the vice president and the secretary of state. This is arguably your number 2 and 3 in government. And they are there in a staggered way throughout the week, in addition to the actual American operators on the ground, which are there to oversee the return of the hostages and the prisoner exchange. in a logistical capacity, but you also have the high-level personnel. And the reason they are there, according to the press, and everyone is noticing this, is to babysit Israel. They are there as a form of soft pressure. Because the calculation is that if Rubio or Vance or Witkoff is actually on the ground in Israel, then Netanyahu would be too embarrassed or too ashamed, or might feel in a way pressured not to restart the war. So think about it. The deal is 2 weeks old. The deal's been in place for, I think, just shy of 3 weeks, about 2.5 weeks. And after the hostilities over the weekend, which is critical to the timeline here, after the hostilities this weekend, where Hamas is mounting some attacks, they're not giving up all their weapons pursuant to the deal, and that hasn't really been discussed yet. Israel hit back really hard. Hamas is accusing them of violating the deal. It's in the context of the ceasefire basically falling apart immediately, that they are there to make sure that Netanyahu doesn't pull out. And the message is something like, if you pull out, we will be very unhappy. There's not actually a credible threat there. And there's something pathetic about this. And think about it in this way. So we'll talk about this first, then we'll talk about Vance and what his political game was in Israel, because I think that's worth talking about. Here is strategically what is happening for the United States. You look around the world, and the alarming development, of which there are really two in particular, but one in general, what is happening in the world is the return of strategic competition. Long-term strategic competition between great powers. This is something that was not the case prior to roughly 2015. From 1991 until 2015, our threat assessment as a country, we were preoccupied with proliferation of WMDs, rogue states, and terrorism. Those were the major threats. So we were worried about Al-Qaeda and Al-Shabaab and groups like this, the Taliban. We were worried about rogue states like North Korea, like Serbia, like Iran. We were worried about the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, chemical, biological, nuclear weapons. But after the fall of the Soviet Union, we didn't have to worry about a great power like we did in the previous centuries. We didn't have to worry about the Soviet Union, Nazi Germany, Great Britain, the French Empire. For the first time, and another way to say this is that our relative power was greater than ever. Our power relative to the next most powerful country was wider. That gap was wider than ever before in history. Nobody had achieved anything approaching equality, regional hegemony in any sphere of influence in any part of the world. And so we dominated every state. But the two particular developments which changed this is the rise of Russia. Russia rebuilt itself after the dismemberment and the fall and collapse of the Soviet Union. And China had its economic boom, which then began to translate into the projection of military power. And so this is the world we're living in now. And we have overcommitted so why are we going back that far? Because we have to understand that the landscape is changing and we are stretched out too thin. Our relative power is diminishing. America's power relative to the next second and third most powerful countries, China and Russia, is now non-existent. China and Russia together are as powerful as the United States, arguably. And so this is why the United States is becoming increasingly reliant on its allies, like NATO in Europe, like Egypt, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the Emirates, and Turkey in the Middle East, India to counter China in the Indo-Pacific, Japan, Australia, and India in the Pacific to counter China's broader influence in East Asia and the Pacific. This is why we're relying on our allies. We want to add on and supplement American power to balance Russia and China, which are on the rise. And what we're starting to realize is that we're stretched too thin. We're overcommitted. We cannot protect Europe from Russia. We cannot protect Israel from Iran and all of Iran's allies. We cannot protect Taiwan from China all at the same time. If all of these wars happen simultaneously, we would not be able to defend all of our empire. One of them would have to give here. We could not deny Ukraine, or rather, we could not deny Russia trying to get Ukraine. We could not deny Iran attacking Israel. We could not deny China trying to invade Taiwan all at the same time. And so we're starting to prioritize. And we're starting to say that China is really going to be the biggest problem. They have the biggest shipbuilding industry by far, the biggest economy. They're competing with us with AI. They have the biggest navy in the world. Their navy in the Pacific is bigger than our navy in the Pacific. They're building amphibious landing boats to land on the shores of Taiwan. And so we're starting to prioritize Asia because increasingly, not only is that where the strategic threat is, but that's also where the strategic interests are. The chips are made in Taiwan, and that's vital for everything in the economy. The rare earth minerals and many other critical minerals are mostly mined and processed in China. And as China, India, and the other Asian tigers take up a larger percentage of the economy, that's where all the critical trade is happening too. And so this is where we're trying to get out of Europe, we're trying to get out of the Middle East, and we're trying to focus on China because they're the biggest, most powerful country, and that increasingly is where the most vital commodities and trade is happening. How do we do that? Well, this is where Trump comes in. And Trump wants NATO to increase its defense budget. He wants Germany, France, and the UK to actually build a military. Because if they can defend themselves from Russia, then we don't have to. And we don't have to worry about it. And we're trying to do the same thing in the Middle East. We still need the Middle East to be stable. We still want to maintain control of that region because you still have oil and gas there. You still have vital trade going through there. But we're passing it off to less reliable allies. In Europe, we are totally aligned with, let's say, Germany, France, Italy, the UK, with the European Union, with the NATO countries there. We have an international architecture. They have the monetary union. They're basically solid. In the Middle East, it's a little bit more shaky, and that's because of the geopolitics of the Middle East. It's because Israel's a pariah state, and they're maybe our most reliable ally, according to the doctrine. That's not me saying that. That's according to American strategic thinking. They have the nuclear arsenal. They have the advanced defense industry. They have maybe the most competent military and intelligence. They're the closest in some ways to the United States, and they're not getting along well with our other allies like Saudi Arabia, like the Emirates, like Iraq, like Egypt and Jordan. And some of those countries have treaties and some of them have informal relationships, but it's not an easy relationship. And so this is really what we're looking to do in the Middle East is we're trying to bring together all of our allies into something like NATO. We want to systematize our alliances in the Middle East. We want to bolster them with our most advanced weaponry, our most advanced planes, missile systems, missile defense systems. We want to train them up so that just like in Europe, we can hand off security responsibilities to them. If Europe spends more money on its defense, we can leave and they can deny Russia. If we can build up the Abraham Alliance, which is Israel, the Emirates, Egypt, Jordan, they want Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the rest of them. If we can systematize these alliances in something like a defensive pact, or there's some sort of multilateral or bilateral relationship with all these different countries, then we'll feel more confident handing off the security responsibilities to them. And they can deny Russian or Chinese influence there. They can handle terrorists, non-state actors, proliferation of WMDs. They could suppress the threat from Iran or whatever. That's the thinking. We hand it off to them. And then once we have Europe and the Middle East taken care of, once Israel and Saudi Arabia, once all the American allies get along, and there's an architecture there, and they have weapons, they can handle ISIS, they can handle the Taliban, they can handle whatever. then we can really do what we need to do and focus on China. We can build up our Navy. We could really focus on that one because that's going to be the crucial one. Now, why do I explain all this? Because this is so critical to understanding why Israel is hostile to our foreign policy, why they're not just like any other country or a bad ally, but they're actually contrary. They're actually hostile to and against our interests. Because keep in mind, think about it in these terms. How can we give security responsibilities to Israel if we can't trust them? Hello, to bring it back to the former point, if we have to send our top diplomatic personnel every single day of the week to basically hold Israel's hand, because if we didn't, we would have no control over them, then how can we give them the whole Middle East and be confident that they will be dutiful American clients? It doesn't work. There's no way. If anything, Israel will only get more powerful under that arrangement. They will have more power over their neighbors. They'll have more latitude and discretion to solve problems their way from the United States. And this is how it is now under the current arrangement. When we are still heavily involved in the Middle East, when we're still deployed in Syria and Iraq, in Jordan, in Israel, actually, and we're still paying all these countries, we're still having to get involved to negotiate all these things. How can we give the security responsibilities to Israel? And by the way, this is the doctrine. This is what J.D. Vance is talking about. This is what the prioritizers are talking about. They're all saying this, which is build up this alliance. That's why they're all not willing to say Israel shouldn't be our ally, because they know that we're going to leave the Middle East and give it to them. Now, consider J.D. Vance and where he enters into this. J.D. Vance is a future presidential aspirant. He's going to run in 2028. And let me tell you, they already think he has the job. Everybody in this White House that's on his side, everybody in his team, they think it's a done deal. His wife, in her mind, she's a first lady already. You know that? Usha Vance, she already thinks she's the first lady. Everyone thinks J.D. Vance is already the president. So Vance wants to be president, and he wants 2 terms. He wants to be president from 2029 until 2037. And so if this pivot to Asia happens and we hand it off to Israel, it's going to be his job. And so he goes over there to Israel, and he stands there with Netanyahu, and he said something really interesting. Him and Netanyahu are talking about this, and they say, everyone is talking about whether Israel controls the United States or the United States controls Israel. They say, that's ridiculous. Israel is our partner. This is a story about this awkward exchange. It says, quote, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Vice President J.D. Vance on Wednesday denied that Israel was a protectorate or a vassal of the United States after being questioned about the growing criticism of the U.S.-Israel relationship and Israel's reliance on U.S. military aid. Netanyahu told reporters, well, I want to put it to you very clearly, 1 week they said that Israel controls the United States. A week later, they say the United States controls Israel. This is hogwash. We have a partnership, an alliance of partners who share common values and common goals. We can have discussions, we can have disagreements here and there, but on the whole, I have to say that over the past year, we have had agreement. Vance said, we don't want a client state, and that's not what Israel is. We want a partnership. We want an ally here. The U.S. Vice President also appeared to respond to the criticism of the U.S. monitoring of the Gaza ceasefire and the slew of high-level officials visiting Israel. He said, quote, it's not about monitoring in the sense of, you monitor a toddler. It's about monitoring in the sense that there's a lot of work, a lot of good people who are doing that work, and it's important for the principals and the administration to keep on ensuring that our people are doing what we need them to do. The U.S. military has established a monitoring center in southern Israel where it's expected to deploy about 200 troops. So Let's think about what he's saying here. He comes there and says, Israel's not our protectorate. They're not our vassal. They're not even our client. They're our partner. They're our ally. Netanyahu says, well, sometimes we disagree. We agree here and we disagree there. Excuse me, he says, but generally we agree. Now let's back it up here for a second. Consider the U.S.-Israel relationship. We have given them $250 billion in cash since Israel has been founded. $250 billion worth of weapons, money, interest, you name it. And probably that number is many multiples of that. That is the nominal, not inflation-adjusted price tag of how much money we have given to Israel. It's probably closer to $1 trillion. And that doesn't factor in the wars. That doesn't factor in the war in Iraq. That doesn't factor in operations against Iran, against Yemen, against you name it. They are totally dependent on us. And we've talked about this in great detail before. It's not just the aid, which is exorbitant. It's not just the foreign aid for the other countries, because we have to give a lot of foreign aid to Egypt and Jordan just to keep the peace. In some sense, we have to give weapons to countries like Turkey or Saudi Arabia to keep them happy. It's also not just the wars and the other operations, like in Iraq or in Syria, in Yemen. But on top of that, it's the fact that if we weren't there, Israel would get destroyed. If we weren't there with our aircraft carriers, if we weren't there in the United Nations, there's also an invisible cost. It's not just the money we give them and the things we do, it's also the things that do not happen because of our presence. So factor in every carrier strike group that sails through the Middle East, factor in all the other deterrents, all the other bribes, all the other diplomacy at the United Nations, all the other hidden costs, the opportunity costs. We're not doing business with some of these countries because of this. It's a very, very high price we pay. And it's for one reason, and that is to secure the existence of a Jewish state. No other country is like this. Not our Arab allies, not our European allies. There's no other country that we say it's like good in the world to have a Jewish state, and largely because of the control over our political system that we do all this, but it's because it's Israel. That's why. It's because it's Jewish. It's because Jews run America. It's important to them. They use their money to bribe our system. In many ways, it's coordinated. This is why it is. Now you have Vance over there saying, oh, well, now it's a partnership. Now we're equals. Now we're allies. Really? What kind of alliance is that? Seems like a pretty shitty alliance. And think about what Israel does for us. We have to be there to babysit them so they won't violate the deal that we forced on them after they bombed our ally without telling us. So we do all the money, all the weapons, all the wars, all the threats, all the diplomatic pressure, sanctions, all of it. And then they tell us they're equals. They can do whatever they want. We have to go there to monitor them because if we don't, they'll break the deal we imposed on them after they bombed our ally without telling us and destroyed those relations or threatened to, in a war that is making the entire world hate us, that we're also paying for, that we don't even want to happen. That's the alliance. That's our alliance, our partnership as equals. So what's the partnership? We back up the truckload of money and weapons and wars, and there's no expectation that you will do anything we tell you to do? You attack our allies? You try to provoke new wars that we will have to fight? You do things that are destroying our reputation by proxy? What kind of alliance is that? What kind of partnership is that? And then they say, well, we agree sometimes, we disagree sometimes. Well, why the fuck are we giving this country all this money for them to disagree with us? We're giving them money for them to disagree with us and do their own thing? Here's $1 trillion, and we'd like you to do this, but if you don't, that's okay too. Okay, so why are we giving them the money? What kind of partnership is that? Where is the Where is the mutual benefit there? We give you everything you ask for, everything you demand, everything you want, and then you do whatever the fuck you want. You feel licensed to disagree at will because you're an independent country. This isn't a relation of a vassal or a protectorate or a client or a suzerain. This is a relationship of equals, partners, allies. Well, that doesn't feel very equal to me. That doesn't feel like a relation. There is no equality. We are a country of 350 million people. You're a country of 8 million people. We have a $30 trillion economy. You don't have a $1 trillion economy. We have 10 aircraft carriers. You have none. We have thousands of nukes. You got 200. We have hundreds of thousands of soldiers. You have reservists. You got nothing. We have a continent. We have a fucking hemisphere. You have a plot of land the size of New Jersey. There's nothing equal about it. You are our slave. That's how it should be. And we've now, I guess, in an ironic way, we've been promoted before our vice president and president felt the need to go and kiss their wall. Now we don't have to do that anymore. Now we got upgraded to equals. In reality, we were the client state. We got upgraded to partners. Oh, great. We get to disagree with you now? That's sort of like the grand irony. It's not like they got upgraded from vassal to partner. No, we got upgraded from vassal to partner. Before, the expectation was we kiss their wall and we have to do whatever they say. We have to agree. Now we get the ability to disagree publicly. Now we get the ability to not kiss the wall if we don't feel like it. We're enjoying our new partner status. Now, the reason that Vance is saying this, and he said it last year too. Vance gave this speech about Israel at the Quincy Institute last year. I keep returning to the speech because it's to date his clearest statement on Israel policy to date. He said that we want to give Israel the tools they need so that they can deal with the problems in their region. Basically what I described before, the handoff. Vance said, what are the areas of engagement with Israel? We're going to develop missile systems with Israel. We're going to give them our most advanced systems. They're going to use those advanced systems to fight their own wars, to fight Iran, to fight these other countries. He said, and they're going to do that to protect the holy sites, and they're Western and democratic and the rest of it. And you could see in real time, the deal is getting sweeter for Israel. Think about this. Think about what is happening, and then think about how they're marketing it. They're saying, we're getting ready to leave the Middle East. We don't want to fight the wars. But we're going to give Israel all the weapons they want, and we're going to give them the keys. And if they want to go to war with Iran, if they want to nuke Iran, we're going to let them. If they want to invade Lebanon and Syria, we're going to let them. They get all this power, and they say we're even going to wind down the foreign aid. Because the critique or the complaint from the Israelis is that foreign aid, which comprises a significant percentage of Israel's military budget, actually constrains them. It makes them dependent on us. And so in the future, if we want to manipulate their country, we would use foreign aid as a lever. So they're saying we don't even want it anymore. So think of this. We created Israel. We armed Israel. They stole the bomb from us. We fought all their wars. We defeated all their enemies. We ethnically cleansed, that's going to be the end result of this, their territory. And then now that we have delivered Israel into the world, now we're going to give them even better weapons. We're going to give them once and for all another 10-year MOU, more foreign aid, so that when they are ready to cut the cord, they will. And then now they have emerged as a regional hegemon in their own right. The training wheels will be taken off. And after we have bled and spent all our money, after we have destroyed our own country and our own reputation with these people, now the region has been made safe for Israel. And now to the extent that our help might constrain them, now they're ready to cut the cord. And now they're ready to conduct their independent foreign policy where they disagree with us. So now in the future, if they want to bomb Iran, we can't say anything about it. If they want to ethnically cleanse the West Bank, we can't do anything about it. We have no foreign aid lever. They're an ally. We're in Asia. We can't focus on that. That's the new era in the Middle East. That's what they're after this war in Gaza. This is the once and for all push. This is what the Trump administration is here for. The Trump administration is here to wipe out Israel's remaining enemies, which are Iran, Hezbollah, the Houthis, the Palestinians. It's to give them one more 10-year contract. It's to give them more weapon systems. And then after Trump is out or Vance is out, within the next 10 to 15 years, then Israel will be the hegemon of the Middle East. And then they will be a regional power, maybe as influential as a Germany, a France, UK. They just keep rising up. That's the whole point. And Vance, when he's in Israel, he doesn't go to the Wailing Wall. He doesn't go to the Western Wall, the remnant the Jews claim from the Jewish temple. Instead, he goes to a church. And people say, oh, I like this. This is nice for a change. Vance has said it should be like this every time. Don't you understand, you fucking idiots? He's still in Israel. Don't you understand what he's there for? He's still there to pay his fealty. He's still there to bow his head and genuflect. But you think because he went to one UNESCO World Heritage Site instead of another, people are saying, oh, this is based. They're planning the conquest of Jerusalem. They're planning another crusade. You're playing with dolls, you fucking faggot. Seriously? How gullible you people are. And by the way, Charlie Kirk was doing the exact same thing. It's called a rebrand. They know that this old pro-Israel consensus is falling apart. They know that nobody in the under 40 crowd believes in that anymore. They know they're going to need a new pitch, a new strategic pitch, a new ideological pitch for why we should maintain this relationship. And this is what they came up with. It was too obvious to have our leaders going there and kissing the wall because it was humiliating. It was too obvious to give them all this money and say, they don't need us, we need them. That was insane. That just didn't make sense. So this is a subtle rebrand. It's like a logo change. And now when they brand the Israel relationship, they say, well, they're the custodian of the Christian holy sites. Charlie Kirk said the same thing. I support Israel because they protect the holy sites. Vance is there at the Christian. This is where Christ walked. And notice, as long as you're saying things like that, you're still supporting the Jewish control over Israel. You're still supporting the American alliance with Israel. You're saying, we don't want Israel to fall to the Muslims because they keep the holy sites even for us Christians. That's the pitch, dummy. That's what they're doing there. It is so obvious. And don't get me wrong, there's a Christian community that goes back thousands of years there, and it's an important one. But if you're really Catholic, you understand there's really no spiritual connection to the Holy Land. That's the whole message of the gospel, is that we have a spiritual temple. We don't have a literal temple with literal sacrifices, and we have a spiritual temple, a spiritual kingdom. And the line of David, the line of Abraham and Moses is now spiritual. You're spiritually an Israelite or a Jew because we're part of the covenant with Jesus, which is available to everybody. So when they say things like, well, they keep the holy sites, I say, I don't really care that much, actually. That's not actually going to do it for me. So what they're trying to do now is find a language to appease the angry America First crowd that will get them to go along with the new normal with Israel. Okay. We're not going to give them as much foreign aid, and all right, we won't kiss the wall, but you're still going to see them going over there at the Christian sites. We're still going to be developing missiles with them so that they can attack their enemies in the same way that Ukraine is. It's a distinction without a difference. They're going to obfuscate it as they always have, and we will continue to be. the patron of Israel without any of the benefits. That's the whole point. How dare J.D. Vance go there and say, they're not a client state? Why would you not? Of course they're a client state. Of course they are. What else would you call that? It's not good enough. They're our partner. They're our ally. No, they fucking suck. They're not a partner. They're not an ally. They're actually undermining our interests. They forced us out of the Iran nuclear deal. They sabotaged our diplomacy with Iran. They prefer ISIS to the Iranian forces, to the Shiite militias. They're not an ally. It's like, oh, we disagree on some things. There should be no daylight between us. So this is a rebrand, and this is getting you ready for another flavor of that classic U.S.-Israel relationship. This is just a new version. That's all that is. And I'm not gullible enough to look at the visuals here. It's always the pictures. You know, Trump is not doing mass deportations. It's almost been a year. It hasn't happened. He did this giant bill using budget reconciliation. We got nothing. We got nothing. We got a corporate tax cut. Like, nothing good is happening, but people say, well, look at the pictures. The best to ever do it. Do what? Take pictures? Take pictures and make shitty jokes at the press? I mean, don't get me wrong. The stuff is funny. It's cool. But we wanted our revolutionary vanguard. We wanted our nationalist regime. And now they're doing the same with Vance. And Vance, he's a very skilled politician. He's doing everything right to earn the support of the base in the 2027 Republican presidential primary, because that's when it's going to start. Throwing himself in front of the Charlie Kirk funeral, throwing himself out in front of the Charlie Kirk podcast, throwing himself in front of this at the church. That is all meant to assuage the Tuckers, the Candaces, the so-called anti-Semites. And if you don't believe me, I'm not the only one who sees this. Edward Luttwak, who is literally part of the Israel lobby, former IDF soldier, mentor for Bronze Age pervert, co-wrote, or I think he wrote the foreword to one of the industrial policy books on free trade. Edward Luttwak wrote on Twitter today basically the same thing. I replied to it. He said, I'll pull it up actually. I don't have it in my notes. But this is from the horse's mouth. He writes, Vance went to the church instead of the wall, as all foreign potentates do. That gesture to his isolationist base, with its quota of anti-Semites, need not weigh on him if he finds a way to balance it. In other words, they're saying, we know you need to signal to your anti-Semitic base. We know you need to signal to the isolationists, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, the Tuckers, with its quota of anti-Semites like your Candace Owens. He said, we know you need to do what you got to do to get those people over. That's why you went to the church and not the wall. And maybe that won't be a problem for you as long as you balance it out with enough supplication for Israel. That's what he's saying there. It's very obvious. And this is Bronze Age pervert's top guy. He writes last year, I suggest for Secretary of State Edward Luttwak. He has good ideas regarding U.S. engagement in the Middle East and so on, he says in his cocksucking white caricature voice, his Borat voice. And the reason I get frustrated is because it's not even, they're not hiding it. And it's not that convoluted. It's not that sophisticated, but it's just layered enough that your average normie has no idea what they're talking about. They see the picture and they say, oh, he's at the church. Based? It's going to be like the Inquisition. It's going to be like the Crusades. You fucking stupid goy. That's why you deserve to be ruled, because you're stupid. They're right. And that's what hurts, is that they're right about the goy. They look at these guys from the Christian nationalist scene. They look at these guys calling each other patriot and heritage American, glazing this administration, and they know they got him. The Jews know they got him. They tricked him. these dumbasses. And they're out there working for free. You know, these guys like Kipta and like these other ones, David Carlson, those types, you know, the type I'm talking about. Maybe you have no idea. These types of people that are glazing the administration, they are diligently working for this administration. We got to get out the vote. We got to pressure the administration. We got to win the argument. John Doyle is the congenital goy. Meanwhile, people like Gavin Wax, Laura Loomer are stepping on their head as they ascend to real power. John Doyle, Patrick Casey, where's your admin position? Patrick, your application for DHS didn't work out? Why? Kipta, your application to DHS didn't work out? Why? Gavin Wax is at the State Department. Darren Beatty's at the State Department. Why is that, cocksuckers? Why is that? How come you, white patriot heritage Americans, how come you guys didn't get a job in the administration? You're writing articles for Chronicle and slumming it with the young Republicans. Meanwhile, Gavin Wax, the ZOA delegate, and Laura Loomer are in the administration. Laura Loomer's getting contracts out from Susie Wiles on her opponents. Darren Beatty's at the State Department. He's got a $200 million budget at the U.S. Institute for Peace, and they think it's a funny joke. They laugh. Mike Benz is there too. We have to stop being the stupid people. We have to stop being the sucker here. Don't these people ever wonder, did they have anything to show for this? Doyle couldn't even get a show on Blaze. These people get no access. They have no influence. They have no power. They work their fingers to the bone. They have this false sense of allegiance to this administration. And I think of other people too. I think of other people too that work for me, people who are close to me, other minions of mine. Same thing. Where's your fucking job? But the Jews, like Gavin Wax, Loomer, Levin, Randy Fine, Darren Beatty, they have access in spades. Edward Luttwak for Secretary of State, says Bronze Age pervert. He's got great ideas about the Middle East and so on, he says in his Borat voice. Like Sacha Baron Cohen, another great patriot for Israel who hates the anti-Semitic Turks and Central Asian people. You got to stop being so stupid, okay? You got to take your own side. They're not on our team here. Vance is not. I don't care how many pictures you show of Vance is at a church, wholly based. Yeah, okay. Look at who he's rolling with. Look at his chief of staff. His chief of staff was funded by the Tikva Fund. You think it's going to be the fucking Vance Reich? Get a grip. His wife is Indian. So are his kids. What kind of Reich do you think you're going to get out of that? So it's time to take our own side. None of this nonsense, man. Time to grow up. I've watched this my entire life. I've been watching this my entire life for 10 years. And that's pathetic. So anyway, that's a setup. I see it so clearly. You people do not. But that's that. We're going to move on. We're going to take a look at our super chats. We're not going to have time for Venezuela. We'll see what you guys have to say about all this. Did I say, some people are saying chief of staff? I meant chief of staff. All right, but we're going to move on. We'll take a look at our super chats. I get angry because it's people I know. It's people I know, and they should know better. But the good news is, I know there are high IQ groypers out here that get this. We need a vanguard. We need a vanguard. We need a vanguard that is mostly white. It doesn't need to be all white, mostly white, no, not Jewish at all. It needs to be mostly Catholic. And it needs to understand the dynamics of the game here. Okay? Going to the church in Israel is exactly what it looks like. It's a photo op. It's a stunt. It's a gimmick. It's a marketing ploy. They realize people don't like Israel. They do something base there. They say, well, we don't want to fight wars for Israel. We want to defend their based Christian churches from Muslim savages. It's the same message. It's the same message. He's changed out some of the words. Anyway, we're going to move on. We'll take a look at our super chats. We'll see what you have to say about all this. Let's see.
Groipster 1 sent $30. Thanks, Nick.
Hey, thank you, man. Groipster1, the GOAT.
Norge sent $25. Norwegian Groiper here. Been watching this great show for free for some months now. So here is some money. Gen Z in Norway loves you. Keep up the good work.
All right, let's go. Love the Scandinavians. Love the Norwegians, W.
Groiper
I have a good friend who's Norwegian.
General 1488 sent $50. What's the point of an empire if it doesn't serve us? When will one of our South American vassals send us 40?
All right, let's get right to it. So I'm going to mainly focus on Israel, this peace deal, what's going on with that. And something that Nick didn't mention, I was actually surprised that he didn't bring this part up when it comes to JD Vance. Maybe he just didn't get the info in time. But did y'all see what happened when Israel, they voted? And let me read it word for word so I'm not messing y'all up, but it says that a bill that would apply Israeli law to the occupied West Bank won preliminary approval in Israel's parliament on Wednesday. So apparently they voted for this while JD Vance was in Israel. So a lot of people are asking questions about this, trying to figure out, was this a political stunt? Was this like a slap in the face towards doing this while JD Vance is out there, when Trump has said very clearly that Israel is not annexing and taking over the West Bank? He said he wouldn't allow it. Let's take a quick look at that video real quick. And you guys, I'll let y'all be the judge.
That was weird. I was sort of confused. By that. Now, I actually asked somebody about it, and they told me that it was a symbolic vote, some symbolic vote to recognize, or a symbolic vote to annex the West Bank. I mean, what I would say to that is when I asked about it, somebody told me that it was a political stunt, that it had no practical significance. It was purely symbolic. I mean, look, if it was a political stunt, it was a very stupid political stunt, and I personally take some insult to it. The West Bank is not going to be annexed by Israel. The policy of the Trump administration is that the West Bank will not be annexed by Israel. That will continue to be our policy. And if people want to take symbolic votes, they can do that. But we certainly weren't happy about it. Thank you.
Well, we certainly weren't happy about it. Yeah. It's just another instance in which Israel is flexing and letting the rest of the world know exactly who's in charge. In my opinion, this has been a bad investment. If you just looked at this from an investment standpoint when it comes to Israel, it seems like the United States is renovating, building up a business. Let's say you're renovating a building. You're putting in all these, the nice stairs, the waterfalls. You're doing all these renovations, but then you do not own it. You don't own it. You have no say-so, but you're putting in all these renovations. Let's look at it like a different type of business. You're going in there, you're coaching, you're consulting, you're building the business up, right? A business that would not be able to survive without you in this stage that they're in. Then they get more and more powerful. You help them gain power, but you have no stake in the actual business. So when it's going to eventually get to the point where they get so powerful, now you just created your biggest competitor. You're not partners. This is not a true partnership when you make Trump and America look like fools. Every time Trump is trying to put these peace treaties in, you're violating them before he wakes up the next day. This is not a partnership. Trump knows this. Bibi Netanyahu knows this. And now the rest of the world and the rest of America have found out. And perhaps that's the reason why a lot of Americans are now changing their tune and looking at this Israel-Palestine conflict and perhaps Israel overall in that region a lot differently. We're looking at Israel different.
So let me go through some of these notes. JD Vance, so he went to the church, didn't kiss the wall. They can say it's symbolic. They can say that the vote was symbolic. Yeah, it's symbolic of the fact that we don't respect you. What isn't symbolic? Like casting it off is just, oh, it's just symbolic. It doesn't mean anything. Well, isn't that the actual definition of, like, saying that it's symbolic and then saying that it doesn't mean anything? Isn't that kind of like an oxymoron? Like, those two things don't fit. Like, that's exactly what it is. It's symbolizing something meaningful, in my opinion, at least. So let's get to these notes real quick. And then I had a question for y'all. Maybe you guys can help me with this. But when Nick talks about America, and he did it in the previous episode, what was that, 1585, he was talking about America getting involved, whether it was Argentina or Venezuela, and he was saying that he's not an isolationist. He's not like Tucker. He's not pushing for no expansion or us not getting involved in any of these foreign affairs. He's saying that that was always America. We were always the conquerors. He made certain comments saying, like, yeah, these people are walking around barefoot, but they got gold underneath their land. Like, it's not your gold. It's only your gold if you can protect it. He was saying all these colonizing type of things using this type of rhetoric. Isn't Nick, and tell me if I'm wrong, and I'm going to be processing this as I'm saying it, but the same reasons that Nick believes that America should be willing to expand for power, colonize, take other people's stuff, that's what he was saying. Isn't that exactly what Israel, their mindset is? So my question is, does Nick have a problem with Israel having the same mindset that he's saying that America should have, expanding in that region, making sure that they become as powerful as possible? When it comes to America, you're making sure that America becomes as powerful as possible because Russia and Ukraine are creeping up, or sorry, Russia and China are creeping up on us. Their power is increasing, so that gap is closing. So therefore, we need to make sure that we're working with our allies to gain more power. Isn't that the same mindset that Israel has? Israel knows that as the people in their region, their ops, their enemies, as they grow more powerful, Israel has to grow powerful. They may look at it like, hey, they're gaining ground on us, so therefore we need to make sure that we're growing and not just staying stagnant. It's one of those mindsets where it's like, if you stay the same, then you're actually going backwards. So I guess the question is, does Nick actually disagree with the principles of Israel when he calls out the genocide that Israel's committing with Palestine? Is it more just about the principles? Is it the way that they're going about it? Because it seems like Nick feels the same way when it comes to America expanding. Or is Nick's only issue that Israel has an influence on us, that we're the ones that are funding it, that we're putting all this money into something that we're not going to have a good return on our investment, and overall we won't own? The more powerful they get, the more they're going to feel empowered to not do what we ask of them. They're using us. The only way that they can gain this power in that region is solely because of their affiliation or leveraging United States power in that region. That's the only way that they're growing their power. That's the only way that they're going to be able to achieve this greater Israel. That's the only way, and that's the reason why Bibi Netanyahu had that clean break memo proposed. He didn't reach out to another country to have that clean break memo. He was working with Americans in our government, because he knows, and they've been very strategic with how they can use America to get whatever it is that they want done. They'll say certain things on TV to make it seem like we're partners, we're allies, that it's very valuable for the United States to have a relationship with Israel, that Israel is out here defending America's name and rights in the Middle East. I don't think most intelligent, free-thinking people believe that. Like, this is very clear to see, in my opinion, but maybe that's just me. Like I said, this is my opinion. Nick asked a couple questions. One was, how can we give security responsibility to Israel if we can't trust them? How can you give security responsibility when you have a country that's bombing our ally in Qatar? If Israel doesn't listen and respect us now, why do we think why do we think that as they gain more power and use us to gain that power, that they'll start respecting us more, listening to us more? It's just not realistic. JD Vance and Donald Trump are very frustrated with Israel. If they could be honest with the media, if they could be honest with America, if they could be honest with the world, they would make this very clear. But you can read between the lines, you can see their frustration. You can see their frustration. I don't believe that Trump was lying when he was running for president, and he was passionate about no new wars, ending the war between Israel and Palestine, even ending the war between Russia and Ukraine. I just don't think that the countries respect him as much as he thought that they respect him, and therefore they haven't been listening to him in order to get stuff done. He can't convince both sides to do what they want to do in either situation. He can't convince Russia to go along with what he's saying. That seems to be what's holding up that, what's challenging that peace deal, because Trump just doesn't have any power. He thought that he'd be able to negotiate with both. He doesn't seem to have the power when it comes to Israel in getting them to commit to a ceasefire, getting them to commit to a peace deal. We're seeing it. We've seen it every time he announces a peace deal. Every time he announces a peace deal, we see it. So let me look at a couple other things that I wrote down. America's lead over China and Russia is dwindling. Nick covered that. Nick made a funny mention of Nick. I think obviously I don't think he was being serious, saying Israel's our slave. Well, maybe he was being serious, but or maybe I don't know how you would create the proper analogy for that, but Israel's running America. We're going to go broke. We're going to drain our resources. We're going to create this fatigue in our country to where our military doesn't even feel strongly. Our country is not feeling prideful about these wars that we're getting ready to engage in. And that's what a lot of the wars are supposed to create. A lot of what the conflicts are supposed to create for these politicians, right? They get us to come together and unite. No, what we're coming together and uniting on is the fact that we don't want any involvement. And the number one area that we don't want any involvement, in my opinion, is Israel. And we're making it very clear. These things are becoming very clear. America does not want to be involved in what Israel is doing in that region, period. It's becoming clearer and clearer, in my opinion. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. So Nick mentioned a couple things about Catholicism, and he said Catholicism was more so about a spiritual temple, and they believe in making spiritual sacrifices, not an actual, not caring less about what JD Vance may say as far as, you know, his support for Israel because they protect the holy sites. Nick is not as concerned with that. Nick is not as concerned with that. And to be totally honest, as I'm just processing it right now, I wish more people perhaps I'm not saying that I wish because I got to process it, but the question that I'm asking myself is perhaps if more people adopted this mindset, knowing that, hey, it's just the spiritual component to it is more important than the actual physical location, then perhaps we wouldn't have all this fighting that we're seeing. Perhaps we wouldn't. Now, maybe it would still be there, maybe it wouldn't, but it's, to me, it seems as if that's a huge part of a lot of these arguments, drawing these lines, the land, the holy sites. And actually, maybe that's a bit naive, me saying that, because to be totally honest, regardless of whether we're fighting over this holy land, the main thing is that Palestinians feel that they were in that land. Well, I can't even say they feel that they were there. The Palestinians were there. They owned property. They owned homes. And then they were removed from their homes. And then they were never compensated for their homes and never given the right to return home. And that's a violation of international law. So I don't know, regardless of the holy sites, the Palestinians would still be pissed off, like most of us would still be pissed off, is if I came home and my home, somebody else was occupying it, somebody else was in my crib, changed the keys to my house. Like, I don't think that I'm ever letting that go. That's not going to be something that you just get over. And then you don't even offer me compensation. Like, damn, now you just insulted my, like at the very least, maybe I'll take a short, I'll take an L, but you got to at least maybe overcompensate me. You didn't compensate me fairly. You didn't even feel the need to undercut me and compensate me with anything. So, I don't know. I'm working on stopping to say, I don't know. So y'all help me out with that when I say I don't know. I'm working on it. Nick finished off with saying that we need a vanguard that's mostly white, mostly Catholic, and no Jews allowed. Oh, man. Yeah, Nick just said that. I don't really have many thoughts on it. It definitely, whenever you say something like no Jews allowed, of course, it's going to come across as anti-Jewish. It's going to, people are going to frame it with the Nazi rhetoric. It goes back to me about the whole tribalism and why tribalism is leading us to our demise. This whole thought of tribalism, and that's why I brought up earlier, does Nick have an issue with what Israel is doing? Because it seems like Israel's doing the same thing or doing things for the very same reasons why Nick is okay with America colonizing other countries for power that it brings America. That's the tribalism mindset. Oh, it's not that I'm okay with my tribe doing this against that tribe. And I'll figure out a way to rationalize it. Why, it's so important for me and mine to have this, but them, no, they can't have that. That's the whole tribalism mindset. In my opinion, this is why we get into a lot of these issues that we see throughout the world. And when I talk about I'm talking about humanity. Because we don't embrace that golden rule of treating others the way that we want to be treated. No, tribalism wipes all of our principles, values, morals, all of our integrity. It throws it out the window. It throws it out the window because we change our principles, or we'll put certain values to the side. We'll violate God's commandments. God's most serious commandments. Thou shalt not kill. Oh, well, that's when it applies to us. Like, nobody should kill our tribe. But if this helps our tribe to grow more power, to put us in a more beneficial position, advantageous position, then absolutely we'll do it. This is where the tribalism comes into play. To me, it's only going to lead to our demise. Let's embrace this rule of treating others the way we want to be treated, man. I think, is that not the only way? Or let me ask y'all, are you just more so aligned with Nick? Because Nick loses me when he starts to talk about the whole colonizing and all that. Just for me, not to say that that's just me. Y'all may feel differently. Your experience may lead you to a different place. My bias may just make me think this way. Your bias may make you think a different way, even though I try to be objective with a lot of these things, that's why I'm saying, like, you kind of got the same mindset that Israel has. So is your issue the fact that Israel just has an influence over America? Or is your issue with the principal component when it comes to what Israel's doing? So that's where I'll leave it. Those are my thoughts on it. You guys let me know your thoughts. We really appreciate y'all giving the comments. As I always say, and I just said, my bias are going to come into play just like the rest of our biases are going to come into play. I try to be as objective as possible, and that's why I encourage as many different perspectives, sharing their experiences, sharing their views in the chat, in the comments, because that's the way that it's the only way that we're going to grow. Hearing different people's perspectives, getting as much information, as many different experiences and views, from different vantage points on these topics as possible. And if we truly process those, I think we end up landing in a position where we got to just embrace this golden rule of treating others the way that we want to be treated. But that's just my standpoint. But as always, like, subscribe, turn your notifications on if you haven't already. Leave a comment, as I just said. And I just appreciate y'all continuing to rock with me. So until the next video, I'll see y'all soon.
It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.